Right. So today I want us to talk about antidepressants, and it is well, depending on the culture where you live, it can be a taboo topic, or it can be something that is used a lot. My experience with antidepressant, kind of like it's bittersweet is what I'm gonna define it. So many years ago, to be precise, 8 years ago, um, I have two girls, and then one is 8, one is 6. And after my first pregnancy, I did not experience a postpartum depression. But after my second pregnancy, um, I got depressed or postpartum depression, probably due to the hormones, having a one little kid. So it's pretty common. A lot of women don't know the signs, but it is very common. Or sometimes when they do recognize their signs and they tell to them close people, they will say, "Well, you have 2 kids. What do you expect?" It's depression and it has to be treated. There is multiple ways to treat depression. However, when it's a hormonally related, which happens after delivery, and in my case, I had a um, extremely traumatic experience within the delivery itself. I had a complications with my second baby, and I got almost um, um, PTSD. So after that, everything kind of went downhill. I, for first time, tried to take antidepressants. I was very much opposed to that because I've been reading a lot, and I thought that they are extremely difficult to once you get hooked on them. I thought it's very difficult when you go to withdrawals, or is that what you know? The research has been showing me, or the literature that I've been reading. And so I, it was kind of like my last resort. I tried doing a lot of other things, but with two little kids at home, nothing really worked. The hormones take their their turn, and it became to the point that it was no longer manageable. So at that point, I actually went to a doctor and said, I need help. And I guess that is, I would say, recognizing that you need help from a professional. It is the first and the most important step in treating any condition that is treated with antidepressants or any other medications regarding mental health. And so the first experience was that I was put on I picked my own antidepressants. It was interesting. It was like a menu, and she said, whichever you want. So she gave me the pros and cons of each of the different types of antidepressants, and I picked the ones that I believed are going to fit me well. Um, you know, I kind of did the risk benefit when it came to different types of them. There's different generations of antidepressants and certain things. Certain antidepressants are better for anxiety, certain are better for depression, and so on. I had a lot of anxiety, especially first thing in the morning, because I was, just the mornings were really, really rough for me. So it was combination of anxiety with depression. And so I picked the antidepressants that I thought are going to fit the best for my condition. And I started with a minimum dose because I was, to start with, very skeptical about the use of antidepressants. Um, so I didn't want it to have like a higher dose. So I started with a minimum dose. I had a severe side effects on them, to the point that I would have physical pains in my jaw, a lot of mood swings, and so on. So I was taking them probably not even, 2 months, and then I cold turkey. I just stopped. Um, and then I think after that, it was one more time um, when I actually tried them and it didn't work out for me, so I stopped. All until recently, um, I have had an event in my life that has happened, and again, um, the first and the most important step is um, when you realize that you need to do something about your mental health, or because it's not going to get better. Many times you wake up in the morning or you lay in bed, at night, and you say, well, tomorrow I'm going to do this and it's going to be better. I'm going to do this and it's going to be better. And trust me, I've tried every other possible solution. I have learned so much about so many things in this process. It's crazy. Going through always for me, a natural approach is always the first thing I go to. But sometimes there is a conditions that are way more serious, and they do require a medical attention, meaning the care of antidepressants or taking, taking the antidepressants. So like I said, I had an event in my life that required me to acknowledge that I am not doing well and that I have to start taking antidepressants. Um, I started with a higher dose of different antidepressants than my original time when I tried them. And the dose, like let's just say 20 milligrams was a minimum dose of that certain type of antidepressant. I was put on 100 milligrams, which is like almost three and a half times than the minimum dose from that certain. This is just an example, and I noticed the difference the next day. So the next day, I woke up and I felt different. And when I say different, I mean in a better way. So, um, and and I have been taking antidepressants for I would say a year and a half now, and I'm right now withdrawing and going. I'm lowering the dosage because um, it's the way it is, the treatment plan. So I'm doing that, but um, I have learned so much about that. So when you originally start taking them, it is a smart choice to start with a higher dose and then taper them off rather than, well, different antidepressants will have different ways of how to use them. But for this certain, you know, type that I'm on, which is sertraline, higher the dose, faster results, and better effects. And that's what you want to see. You don't want to wait for too long to see some improvement. So, in my case, as soon as I took the dose, the next day I already start feeling different. I start wanting to do things. I started going to the stores. I just became more functional, things that I wasn't doing prior to that. And then, of course, there's the withdrawal. So the withdrawals from certain medication is extremely difficult, and I have noticed that on my own skin. So you have to be prepared, and not just you, but the people around you, because if they are not understanding what you're going through and what withdrawal means and what are some of the behaviors are associated with withdrawing or tapering of medication, then they are going to take the things that are happening or the things that you're going to be doing personally, and then that will be a reason for a arguments and even a lot of marriages or relationships or communications between friends and family members or partners is really in danger when someone is going through withdrawal, unless the person who is with you and who is your support system, which is another thing that you have to have when you're struggling with any type of mental health, it is that you do have to have a support system in place. And that can be, anyone that you can trust and you can rely, and that it can understand what you're going through, and that they're going to understand that when you're going through withdrawals, you are going to be bitchy and you are going to be sad and you're going to cry without no reason and you're going to argue with no reason. and they cannot take all these things personally because again, that relationship may come to an end, which regardless of what kind of type of relationship we are talking about. So, from my experience, it is important the dosage, the type of antidepressant, and then just being aware of the tapering and the withdrawals. Also, educate others about what you're going through closest to you, whoever is, again, going to serve as a support system, unless they already know and they have their own personal experience. But in my case, people around me didn't have that same experience. So we went through a very challenging times while I was withdrawing from certain medication, and it was extremely hard. So you feel physically sick, and it's almost like the symptoms that you're treated for, like if it's an anxiety or depression or PTSD or OCD or whatever the label you have, it's almost the symptoms of that label or diagnosis are coming back. So it's like your condition is resurfacing, but that only lasts until your body kind of adjusts to the new dose. I mean, there's a whole medical thing going with the serotonin and all of that. We're not going to get into it. We don't want to be too medically, use a lot of medical terminology. We want to be more of a lay person in how us in my presentation. So I'm just saying, like, educate yourself, read a lot about it, and if you don't feel good shortly after you take a medication, in especially antidepressant, it does take a while, but you should feel a difference. If you feel worse, then something is off, and then talk to your provider. It can be the dosage or it can be the type of antidepressants that you are, and you want to change that. Um, yeah. So, all right, that was it. Bye.